be a billionaire so freaking bad.
You're listening to Radio Realty. You've tuned in just in time for our Mortgage Moment, brought to you by Academy Mortgage. Here is Dalton Clark with the answers. Good afternoon, Dalton. How you doing?
Yeah, it's a great day here in Anchorage. How are you doing today?
Are you telling me it's a great day because the Fed met and decided to not raise rates?
You know, honestly, Chris, in my opinion, that is not going to be positive for mortgage-backed securities in the next several months. I think that will be negative for mortgage-backed securities, not positive.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's probably more an elaborate answer than I maybe have time for. In a nutshell, why?
Well, the federal funds rate is really the interest rate at which depository institutions, that's banks and credit unions, actively trade balances held at the Federal Reserve. Those are called federal funds. So that's what the federal funds rate is. It is the basis for a lot of things in our economy that are based on interest rates, but the mortgage-backed securities, which is what directly determines mortgage interest rates, is more affected by inflation and other things than it is the federal funds rate. The stock market, on the other hand, is very much affected by their federal funds rate. So when the federal funds rate stays low or does not increase, that's kind of positive for the overall stock market. But in general, when the stock market is up, the mortgage-backed securities are down.
Okay, got it. All right, good. That's easy. I actually follow that. Thank you. Made that understandable. I want to talk about this whole concept. I found this article on Fox News, pretty interesting, about biweekly payments. Before we get to that, though, can you give me a nutshell or a thumbnail sketch of what today's interest rates are, conventional, AHFC? What's going on across the board?
Today, conventional rates are right about 3.875. That's lower than we've seen them recently. They've been hovering right around 4.125 for a while. Today, the par rate is 3.875. For FHA, we're at 3.625 or 3.75. That's FHA and VA. Specialty programs like Alaska Housing and Rural Development and USDA, those rates are pretty similar across the board, but they don't move as quickly as conventional or FHA or VA rates do.
I can't believe that everything you just said is under 4%.
Yeah, you know, we live in a very interesting time.
I'm going to stop making certain predictions, and interest rates are one of them. I just feel like an idiot. I really thought we'd be over 4% in growing through the remainder of the year.
And honestly, I expect that is in our future, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, or next year. I think that, unfortunately, with our economy, the only direction that interest rates can move is up, because as our economy continues to grow, inflation is really the most negative impact for the mortgage-backed securities market, which is a long-term bond market. So as inflation grows, the mortgage-backed securities market will continue to suffer.
Talking with Dalton Clark with Academy Mortgage. By the way, if you'd like to call Dalton at some point and talk about your mortgage or a refi or a purchase, 929-0515, 929-0515. Dalton, this Fox News business article was talking about biweekly payments, and the real thrust of the article and the argument they were making was, hey, don't pay some third-party company to do and set up and manage your biweekly payments. They're just taking money off the top. You don't need to do that. You can do it yourself. And then they say the bigger question is whether prepaying your mortgage at all is a good idea. And you say?
Generally speaking, my opinion on prepaying your mortgage is that in most people whose financial statements that I look at, there are many other places where they could appropriately position that money, which would be much better for their overall financial health. The problem with paying off a mortgage early or reducing your overall interest or accelerating your payments is that the mortgage not only is one of our largest payments, but it's also one of our largest deductions on the tax return. And so when we continue to pay that off, compared to paying off things like car loans, which are not tax deductible in most cases, credit cards, which are not tax deductible in most cases, if you can focus your money on those things, in most cases, you're better off.
Yeah. Okay. And they even the big annual expenses they talk about, higher interest rate debt, maybe cutting down on some of your other debt. Maybe you've got a credit card at 18%. Maybe you should just take some whacks at that and get rid of it. It's an interesting concept. I don't think if you've got all your financial house in order and your house is not a house of cards ready to fall and you're in good shape all the way around, though, it does make sense, to eliminate that amount of interest you pay over time. I don't hear you just saying that's a bad idea. It's just there's other ways to really prepare yourself, and maybe prepayment's not the best idea today.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, is we have to plan for the future. And one of the things that I see in our generation today is that so many people my age and the next generation below me are really not planning very well for their retirement years. And people are trying to pay off a mortgage when they could take that same amount of money and put it into, a 401k or any other sort of retirement vehicle, which might get them a far better return than reducing the balance on their home, which when you think about the interest rate being, somewhere in that 3.5% to 4.5% range, you're really not saving a lot.
And good point. And if you're not in that 3.5 or 3.85 or whatever range, you ought to be, and you can be. And what you do is you call Dalton Clark with Academy Mortgage, 929-0515. Dalton, thanks for your insight. As usual, it's thought-provoking, and I know it's appreciated by everybody that just heard it.
Well, I certainly appreciate being here today, Chris.
All right, you have a great one, and don't you go anywhere, because we've got the answer coming up here to the AJ's Old Town Steakhouse and Trivia Contest right here on Radio Realty.
Where we live, we got clear blue skies where we live. We got tall old trees where we live.